So now we want to create some code that will allow us to click on a reservation, either from this screen, New Reservations, or from this screen, All Reservations, and display it. And I'm going to display it in a form, so if I want to make changes to it, I can. And I'm also going to, at some point, add the functionality to mark a reservation as processed, which means it will no longer show up on this screen because it will no longer be a new reservation. So to do that, I'm going to need, obviously, a handler. I'm going to need some method of pulling a single reservation out of the database. And I'm going to need to update the template and change my routes. So let's get started. We'll go create a stub handler first. So let me go to my IDE and find my handlers. Here they are. And let's create a handler that shows one reservation. First of all, let me add a comment to this because I didn't do that. Displays the reservation calendar, which we're going to get to eventually. But right now, we want to have a handler which has the receiver of type pointer to repository, and I'll call it admin show reservation. And it will take a response writer. And a pointer to a request. Okay, and we'll have it render a template. So I'll just copy this line just to make things a little faster and paste it in here, and I'll call it admin reservations show. And then I'll copy this name and create that template in my templates folder. New file, paste. I guess I didn't copy the name. Admin reservations show.page.tmpl. And I'll add it to my repository, and I will simply put in, I'll copy something from the dashboard there. Copy this and paste it in here and put this as show reservation, just as a placeholder to make sure it works. And I'll give the title reservation. All right, so we've created that handler. Now let's go create our route. So we called the handler admin show reservation. Let's give it a comment. Shows the reservation in the admin tool. Okay, so let's copy the name and go to our routes and create a route for it. So again, this is going to be in the protected part of our application, and I'll put in mux.get, and for a path name, I think I'll use reservations because the admin part is added automatically. And then I'm going to have the source. And remember that on our new reservations page, the link was /admin/reservations/new/the ID. And on our all reservations page, it's /all/ID. So I need to have a route that actually has a placeholder in it. So the first one will be all or new for now. So I'll call that SRC for source, where we're coming from. And then I'll put ID. And again, because those are matching parameters or matching parts of our route, I enclose them in curly brackets. And then I want to go to handlers.repo.admin show reservation, I think it was. Yeah, admin show reservation. Okay, so we have our route set up. So let's try running this. So I'll stop my application, run my application, just to make sure it works. And go back to my admin tool, reload the page, and just click on one reservation. And there it is. It's showing the reservation. Great. So that's a good start. But it's obviously not enough. We need to grab information from the database in order to show it on this page. So right here in our handlers, when I'm showing the reservation, I need to get reservation from the database. So how am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to open up my Postgres. Postgres.go, and at the very bottom, I'll create a new function. And I'll call it, well, it has to have the receiver of Postgres DB repo, and I'll call it get one reservation. I think that's probably a good name. Now, let's call it get reservation by ID, which is exactly what I'm doing here. And I need to have a parameter, which is the ID of type int, And I'm going to return two things, a models.reservation and potentially an error. Okay, so as I always do, I'm going to go copy the context from up here. I just don't like typing that out. And paste it in. And then I'll create a variable, which I'll call res, of type models.reservation to hold the information I'm going to pull from the database. Now let's write the query. And this is a simple select statement. Query is assign the value of, in backticks, select, and because this is a reservation, it's going to have that room model as part of this struct, so I'll use an alias, r.id, r.firstname, r being an alias to the reservations table, r.lastname, r.email, r.phone, r.startdate, and I'll go on to the next line just to make this a little more readable, r.enddate, r.roomid, r.createdAt, r.updatedAt, r.processed, which is the column we added in the last lecture, or recently anyway. And then rm, I'm getting the room information, rm.id, rm.roomname, and again I don't care about the createdAt or updatedAt for rooms, so I'll ignore those. And I'm selecting that from reservations with the alias of r, and I'm going to left join rooms rm on r.roomid equals rm.id, which uses that for and q relationship to join these two tables together. And finally, my where clause. I want this only for one particular ID. So where r for the reservations table, ID equals, and my placeholder, $1. So that should be my query. Let's make sure we've got it right. Select r.id, r.firstname, r.lastname, r.email, r.phone, r.startdate, r.enddate, r.roomid, r.createdAt, r.updatedAt, and processed. That's all for the reservations table. And then rm.id and rm.roomname. Yeah, that looks right to me. So this is one record we're getting, at most one. If it finds one, it'll return one. If it finds nothing, well, there'll be nothing to scan. So we can use our query row context, which returns one row. db query row context. Hand it the context, hand it our query, and hand it the ID, which is substituted for that $1. So that's our database query. And then we try to scan this into our res variable. So error is assigned the value of row.scan. And as I always do, I'll put this on separate lines so it's easier to read. And I'm going to scan it into the res variable, and the first thing I'm getting from my query is the ID. Now I'll duplicate that a bunch of times just to make it faster. The next thing is first name, then last name, then email, then phone, then start date, then end date, then room ID, and a few more duplications. Then createdAt, then updatedAt, then processed, and I think there's two more, room ID and room name. So room.id and room.roomname. And we check for our error. If error is not equal to nil, then something went wrong. Probably it couldn't find that ID. And we'll just return our res and the error. Otherwise, everything worked as expected, so we'll return res and nil. And that should be it. So let's copy this and give it a comment. Returns one reservation by ID. And then we'll copy the whole thing here and put it in our repository. So let's find our repository and paste that in. And then again, copy the whole thing and put it in our test repo and simplify it as much as possible. Test repo all the way down here, paste it in. We don't need any of this stuff, and we don't need the context. And it has to have the correct receiver. All right, let's make sure this compiles. Good, it compiled, no problem. So let's go back to our handler and grab this reservation. Now, how are we going to get this reservation? Remember, it's at the end of the URL. So there's actually two things I want to pull out of this show reservation on this reservation handler. And the two things are, if we'll go back here and have a look at our page, if we look at all reservations, and you look at the URL in the lower left-hand corner of the screen, we want to get that all to know what page we're coming from, because there's two ways of getting to the page we're working on right now. We can get here from new reservations, or we can get here from all reservations. And we also need the ID in the form of an int so we can do our database query. All right, well, none of that's too difficult. So let's have a look and see how we're going to do it. First of all, I'm going to grab the URL. So right above this, because I'm not calling the database yet, I want to get the URL and I want to explode it, to split it. And what I'm going to split it on are the slashes. So I'll be able to find the individual parts of the URI itself, or the URI or the URL, whatever you want to call it. So I'll create a variable called exploded. And that's going to be equal to the value of, from the strings package, the function split. And split requires a few parameters. First of all, what is the string you want to split? Well, I can grab that from my request. And it's r.requestURI. So that gives me the URI. And then I want to split it on the slash. So when this happens, see what this split returns. It returns a slice of strings. And we know how to find things from a particular position in a slice. The first position in a slice is 0, the second one is 1, the third one is 2, and so on and so forth. So I've got my exploded variable. What I can do now is, first of all, grab the ID. ID, and potentially an error, is equal to the value of, from the strconv package, a to I. We're converting from alphanumeric, to int, or integer. And what I want to convert is from the exploded slice of strings at position 4. And it's position 4 because when I go back here and look at it, and I'll inspect this so we can actually see it, inspect the element, the actual URL is 0 for admin, 1 for reservations, 2 for all, and 3 for slice. Here I am lying to you. We actually want it from 1, 2, 3, position 4. It's the 4th position in the slice. We're not counting from 0 here. At least apparently we're not. We're about to find out. Let's just try, first of all, looking for the error. If error is not equal to nil, then I will just go helpers.server error with my response writer and the error, and I'll return. Not equal to nil. Otherwise, let's just print out the ID. log.println ID. Okay, I'm going to stop my application and run it because I'm not sure whether you count from slices at position 0 or position 1, and this will tell me. So I'm going to run this. Hit enter a few times just to get some blank spaces, and then I'll click on one of these and see what happens. And it gave me 5. And that's exactly what it should be because it's 5 up here in the URL. Okay, so it's right. You don't count from position 0 in slices, you count from position 1, apparently. No, you know, I'm not wrong. Let me go back and look at this again. It's amazing how quickly you forget things. Let me go to all reservations or new reservations and inspect this element. So we're counting by slices. 1, 2, 3, 4. And everything on this side of the slice is the HTTP part. So that's exactly right. Okay. I thought I was forgetting some basic information about Go, but apparently I wasn't. I'm just having a rough day and clearly require more caffeine. Now the next thing I want to get is actually that source variable, which I will use, but not right now. So I'm going to say source is assigned the value of from my exploded slice at position 3, the one just before /ID. And that will tell me where I'm getting this information. Now what am I going to do with that? I'm going to stick it in my string map. So let's create a string map. String map is assigned the value of make map string string. And string map source, src, is going to be equal to source. And I'll stick that in my string map down here. There. Now I also want some place I need to now to grab from the database the ID of the given reservation. So here is where we use that database routine we just created. So I'll call it res.error, or assign the value of m.db.getReservation by ID with the ID I just pulled from the URL up here. Check for an error, and I'll just copy and paste this. And now I want to have some place to hold that information so I can pass it to my template. So as we always do, we'll just create a map. Data is assigned the value of make map string interface. And data, and I'll call it reservation because that's what it is equal to res. And then I pass that to my template. Data, data. Okay, so let's go back to our admin show reservation page and see if we have this information. And what I'll do here is right in the content, I will say define a variable res, and that's assign the value of from my data map of string interface index.data reservation. And here, just to show that it's working, I'll put or print out res.firstname and res.lastname. And that should give me the information just to show that it works. So let's stop our application, run our application, go back to our web browser, close this tab, reload the screen just to make sure everything is current, and I'll click on Jones. And I get Mary Jones. So there, now I'm passing that necessary information to this screen. So what do I want to show here? Well, I want to show some basic information. At the top, I want to show the guest name, the arrival date, the departure date, and the room they're staying in. And then I want to have a form that allows me to modify information. Well, we already have that form mostly built. If we go back to the Make Reservation page, which is makereservation.page.tmpl right here, I already have this form. So I'm going to grab this form, the whole thing, and I'll copy it. And I'll go back to my admin reservation show page template, and I'll just paste it in here and make changes as necessary. So instead of calling the input make reservation, I'll just call it save. And then we'll go up to the top and we'll start making some changes. So what's the very first thing that has to change? Well, we're not going to the action of make reservation. We're going to go to the action that's exactly the same as what we have right here. Admin reservation and either new or all, and then the ID. So I'll change that. Admin reservations. And then I want to put the source here. So what I'm going to do is just after I grab the reservation up here, I'll just create a variable src, which is an index of string map. And the thing I put it in, I believe, was src. That's the key I look it up by. So now I have this as a variable. So here I can just go src. And then what's the ID? Well, it's res.id. And there's an E in there. And that should work. Method is post, class is nothing, no validate, perfect. I need the CSRF token. I don't care about this stuff. So I'll get rid of those 3 hidden fields. They don't matter at all. And then we have first name, that's all correct, good. But I noticed that I'm using a form here. So back in my handlers, when I display this, I had better pass it a form variable, forms.new nil. So it'll actually render the page without an error, so that's okay. We have first name, we have last name, we have email, we have phone, and that's all the basic information. Okay, but I also want to add at this point a cancel button. And the cancel should take me back to either here, new reservations, if that's where I came from, or here, which is reservations all. And you notice that the URLs are almost identical. At the end of the all one, we have dash all. At the end of the new one, we have dash new. So I can actually create a cancel button just by saying href equals, and I'm going to go to admin reservations, and then just put in my source variable. Oh, sorry, reservations, dash, and then my source variable, which is either new or all. And we'll just make this look good. Class equals button, and I'll say button warning, just to give it a different color, and put cancel here. So that hopefully will work. I think I have everything in here the way it should be. Okay, at the top here, I want to change what's being displayed just to make this a little bit better. So I'll say in a paragraph tag, cut that and paste it here. And I already know their first name and last name because it's on the form. So I'll say arrival, and I'll make that in the strong. Arrival, try that again. Strong, arrival, and that's going to be res.start date, but I want it to look nice. So let's take advantage of that human date function we made a lecture or two ago, and then on a new line, and I'll just duplicate this and change this to end date and change this to departure. And then we need the room. So I'll duplicate that again and say room and change this to res.room.room name. Okay, there's too many M's in admin, so let's fix that. Perfect. Okay, let's see what we got wrong. So let's stop our application, start our application. And it's not populating any information in the form yet, but it will be shortly. Let's try clicking on it and see if we got it right. Looks good. It does look good, and it's actually already put the information in the form. Why did it do that? Because I'm actually already using that same information here for error checking on the other page. So, hey, most of our work is already done. Arrival is formatted properly. Departure, there's 2 colons in all of these. Let's go fix that. Don't need the colons there. Reload, looks good. The only thing that I don't like is that this admin template doesn't bold the labels for form tags. So I kind of like that. Let's go back and fix the labels. Too many O's in room there. So we'll go to our admin layout, and right here I'll just redefine the tag label so it doesn't have a dot or a hash mark or anything in front of it, and I'll just say font weight bold. Save that, reload. That looks better. Okay, so we have this done. The next step is, well, there's actually a couple of steps left. One is to make sure that this works. Look at that, admin reservation /new. I'm just full of typographical errors today. So back here, find that cancel, get rid of the slash, reload this. Let's make sure this works. So we'll go to our reservations, new reservations. When I click on this one, it should take me back to new reservations. And it does. And let's go to new all reservations and click on this one. And they should take me back to all reservations. And it does. So we're almost ready to go. There's a couple of things left to do. Number 1, we want a means to mark this as processed. Number 2, we want a means to delete this entirely in case we don't want this reservation. If it was just something that we entered ourselves or it was done in error, whatever. We want the ability to delete it. And finally, we want the ability to modify this information, to update the reservation, to change the email address or change the phone or whatever it may be. And none of that is difficult, and we'll take care of that in the next lecture or two.